Lab 7 Scenario, Panorama Administration, Accounts. In this lab, you will configure Panorama to authenticate administrators against a Radius server. You will also examine and test commit locks so that you can explain how to use them to other administrators who often will be working in Panorama simultaneously. Lab objectives. Configure a Radius server profile and authentication profile. Test the Radius authentication profile from the Panorama CLI. Lab objectives. Configure a Radius server profile and authentication profile. Test the Radius authentication profile from the Panorama CLI. Configure an admin role profile. Create an administrator account and assign the admin role profile to it. Configure and validate administrator accounts. Use commit lock. High-level lab steps. Load the LabStart configuration file. Load and commit the EDU 220-11i lab-7start.xml configuration file on Panorama. Commit the configuration. Commit the configuration to Panorama. You do not need to push any configuration to the firewalls for this lab. Configure a RADIUS server profile. Use the information below to create a server profile for RADIUS that you will use later to authenticate accounts for access to Panorama and managed firewalls. In the Panorama web interface, select Panorama greater than server profiles greater than Radius. The lab has a pre-configured Radius server running on. Click Add. Test the Radius authentication profile from Panorama CLI. Connect to Panorama using the Ramina application. Use the following command to verify that Panorama can authenticate a network. Administrator using Radius. Test authentication. When prompted for password, enter Pulsar-Alt-0. Commit the changes. Commit the changes to Panorama. You do not need to push any configuration changes to the managed firewalls. Configure an admin role profile. Use the information below to create an admin role profile called intern. Parameter value name, intern role, Panorama description web UI tab. Access limited to dashboard, ACC and logs in the web UI column. Set. Policies. Mark all settings disabled. Red. Device. Mark all settings disabled. Red. Panorama. Mark all settings disabled. Red. Privacy. Mark all settings disabled. Red. Validate. Mark all settings disabled. Red. Save. Mark all settings disabled. Red. Commit. Mark all settings disabled. Red. Tasks. Mark all settings disabled. Red. Global. Mark all settings disabled. Red. XML API tab. Verify that all objects are disabled. Red. Command line tab. Verify that none is selected. REST API tab. Plugins. Set all objects to disabled. Red. Mark the setting disabled. Red. Configure an administrator account. Create a new administrator account using the information below. Parameter value name intern Bob authentication profile. Radius auth profile administrator type custom Panorama admin profile select intern. Commit the changes. Commit the changes to Panorama. You do not need to push any configuration changes to the managed firewalls. Validate administrator access. Log out of Panorama. Log back in using intern Bobby Alt0 as the credentials. Use the system log in Panorama to examine events that show the intern Bob account being authenticated. Log out of Panorama. Log back into Panorama using log back into Panorama using the admin Alt0. Credentials. Use commit lock. Create 2 new administrator accounts. Using the information below. Parameter value name, admin-1, authentication profile, none password, confirm password. Alt0. Alt0. Parameter value name, admin-2, authentication profile, none password, changes to Panorama only. Log out of Panorama. Log in with admin-1 Alt0. Take a configuration lock. Use the information below for the configuration lock. Parameter value type config location. All configuration comments less than or initials greater than working on SEC profiles will be done by noon PDT. Log out of Panorama. Log in to Panorama with the admin-2 pal0 credentials. Attempt to create a new address object called DNS with a type of IPNet mask and a value of. Note the message you receive when you attempt to create this entry. While logged in as admin-2, examine the lock that admin-1 took. Log out of Panorama. Log back in as admin-1. Modify the login banner for Panorama to include access attempts logged. Commit your changes to Panorama. Note that Panorama removes your lock automatically when you commit your changes. Detailed lab steps. Load the lab start configuration file. In the Panorama web interface, navigate to Panorama > setup > operations. Click Load named Panorama.